What comes to mind when you hear the word accountability? I bet a lot of you just cringed because for many people, it means getting blamed, getting written up, or being called into an office to get punished. But that's not what accountability was supposed to be. Somewhere along the way, we've confused accountability with punishment. But today, I want to challenge that idea because I believe accountability isn't something that happens after failure. It's something that's built into the process long before success or failure ever occurs.
Welcome to Coach's Corner. Where host, coach, and martial art instructor Travis Williams and special guests discuss philosophy, theory, and experience of being a coach.
We spend far too much time chasing results. Higher production, more wins, better grades, more profit. But success and failure aren't where leadership begins. It's where the leadership is actually revealed. Success and failure are byproducts of process. Healthy processes consistently produce healthy outcomes. Broken processes eventually produce broken results. If all we ever do is celebrate success or criticize failure, we're ignoring the very things that created them to begin with. Great coaches don't obsess over outcomes, they improve the process that created them. Every process begins with expectations. What does success look like? How will performance be measured? What standards matter? What resources are available? If those questions aren't answered, accountability becomes unfair. One of the greatest leadership mistakes is trying to hold people accountable for expectations they never understood to begin with. I often say uncommunicated expectations become unfair accountability. Before we ever evaluate performance, we must clearly define the success of it. Here's what I believe is missing from most conversations about accountability: trust. Think about it. If every mistake is met with yelling and screaming, embarrassment, finger pointing, or punishment, what happens? People stop telling the truth. Not because they're bad people, because they're protecting themselves. People don't hide mistakes because they're dishonest. They hide mistakes because they don't feel safe enough to tell the truth. Real accountability requires something incredibly valuable: the freedom to say, I made a mistake, without immediately fearing you're going to be torn apart. That doesn't eliminate consequences, but it does create honesty, and honesty allows improvement. Ownership isn't accepting blame for everything. Ownership is accepting responsibility for the part that you can influence. Employees own their effort, trainers own preparation, managers own the environment, organizations own their systems. Nobody owns everything, but nobody owns nothing. Leadership begins when we stop asking, whose fault is this? And start asking, what part of this did I influence? Let me give you an example from a normal workplace environment. Suppose second shift walks in and first shift has left them in complete disarray. Could I tell the second shift team, I don't care what happened, hit your normal numbers anyway, work around it? Sure. But that's not accountability. That's ignoring reality. The process changed, the environment changed. As a leader, I have to revisit expectations. Maybe today's goals shift from production to recovery. Maybe manpower changes. Maybe another project will have to wait until tomorrow. That's not lowering the standards, that's adapting expectations to reality. At the same time, the first shift has to answer for leaving the problem behind to begin with. But notice something important: everyone is accountable. That second shift team is accountable for how they respond. First shift is accountable for the mess that they created. And I'm accountable for making sure the process improves so this doesn't become a tomorrow problem. When trust doesn't exist, people naturally become victims. It wasn't me. Nobody told me. That's someone else's job. It wasn't my fault. The finger pointing starts. The excuse making happens. People start feeling defensive. But when trust exists, people become owners. Yeah, I missed that. Yeah, I should have communicated better. Well, here's what happened. Well, here's how I'm going to fix it. That's the difference between a culture of fear and a culture of coaching. Here's the process I believe every leader should follow. Expectations clearly define success. Trust creates an environment where honesty is safe. Ownership, so everyone accepts responsibility for what they can influence. Accountability, to evaluate performance honestly against the expectations. Improvement, adjust the process, clarify expectations, provide coaching, then begin again. Because accountability isn't punishment, it's continuous improvement. So this week, next time something goes wrong, don't ask who's to blame. Ask these 4 questions instead. What happened? Why did it happen? What can we learn from? What do we change moving forward? Because great leaders don't build cultures where people fear accountability. They build cultures where people value accountability, where expectations are clear, where trust is earned, ownership is encouraged, and every mistake becomes an opportunity to improve the process. Because remember, success and failure are byproducts of the process. Expectations define the process. Trust gives people the freedom to own the process. Accountability protects it. And improvement is what keeps it alive. I'm Travis Williams. This has been Coach's Corner. Until next time, keep coaching, keep learning, and keep leading.